Hello, welcome back to yet another live episode of Green and White, brought to you by Argyle Life. Something a little different to fill the international break as we bring sitting around talking about footballers to the podcast. According to Greens on Screen, 1,193 men have pulled on the Argyle shirt to represent our first team, from Bob Jack to Daniel Grimshaw. And although we might not get round to naming them all tonight, we'll give it a bloody good go. From title winners to banter era ballers, goal-scoring debutants, those who have sparked celebration, controversy and outrage, loanees, youth talents and the freebies. From the best to the worst, we've got you covered. At least I hope. If you like this idea, I'm not sure who wouldn't, but please, like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And make sure you join along in the comments too. We want to just flash up as many names as we possibly can. Joining me tonight in customary clockwise fashion, Adam Price. How's things?
Good evening. Yeah, very well. We've got through a weekend and Argyle haven't ruined it. So it's a win in my book. And now we get to have an hour of guys sitting around naming footballers and having a great time. What more can you want?
If you think this is going to be under an hour, you underestimate your own ability, but as well as Sam and Finn's ability to talk.
Should have known.
Yeah. Sam down. Oh, no, that's not clockwise at all. Sorry, apologies. Finley Allen, how's things?
Yeah, all right, thank you. I'm very much looking forward to this podcast. I believe it feels like a while since I've been on. Can't remember the last time I was. Maybe, don't know anyway. But yeah, good to be back in this circumstance.
How long until the goat gets mentioned, Finn? Algerian goat, to be specific.
Okay, all right. So probably about 10 minutes in that case.
All right, you're not going to mention him now. That's okay. And Sam Down, the Janapedia himself. I'm expecting some hardcore facts from you tonight, Sam.
I'll do my best. No pressure there.
If anybody thinks I look a state, it's because I've just got out of the bath. So yeah, that's fun.
Someone getting out of the bath should look the opposite of a state. I mean, what sort of bath are you having?
Yeah, I know, but I just dried my hair really fast. To kickstart this one, because we don't really have an agenda at all. I mean, I never send you one anyway, but especially for this one, just want to see where it goes. Just got some Kickstarter questions, just in case it gets a bit quiet. Tuesday saw us reminiscing 2 years on from that Sam Cosgrove masterclass up in Derby. So just to kickstart this one, the best individual performances you've ever seen. And we can go from there.
Anyone? I'll start with two that were in the same game. And it was not an entirely meaningless game, but quite a meaningless game in that we were seventh going into the game in League Two, final game of the season, 3 points clear of Luton, who were in eighth with an 8-goal swing required. So it would have taken something pretty disastrous. We only had to draw, or even if we lost, we only had to not be completely thumped. And we won 2-0, so it was never in question. Bobby Reid and Kelvin Mellor that day had two of the finest performances I can recall, and they both assisted each other's goals. So they both had a goal each, an assist each, and two absolutely brilliant all-round performances. And we cost Shrewsbury the title that day. Burton won the title instead because they slipped up for their final game as well. They were top going into it. So had they slipped up and Shrewsbury got a win, Shrewsbury would have been lifting the title that day. So it was good to spoil their party a bit as well. And it was an absolutely fantastic performance that day. And it, just a shame that 5 days later we were 3-0 down at home to Wickham, waving phones and singing Bob Marley, because that was such a fantastic performance that day at Shrewsbury, particularly by Messrs Reid and Mellor.
It's good that you got Kelvin Mellor in there early, because I think he could also go down as one of the worst individual performances we've ever seen on a big stage as well.
Which one?
Exactly, Sam. Exactly. Adam, anything to add? Or anyone? If you just want to just throw a random name and just talk about someone, do it.
I'm happy to. I'm sure it will. The one performance that springs to mind, though, is not exactly an obscure player. It is possibly one of the best players many of us have ever seen over a good period of time at Argyle. And his best performance, in my view at least, for Graham Carey was the 4-0 against Southend. I think it was around about Easter weekend. I think it was a Good Friday because on the Monday we were meant to go up to Scunthorpe, as I recall, or it might have been the other way around, and that got
No, quite right. Good Friday.
all right, lovely, yeah, and that got rained off, and it was a shame that got rained off because we were in unbelievable form, and Graham Carey that Friday just, admittedly, being in the team with Ruben Lemiras helped. That was a decent enough individual performance in its own right, but Carey absolutely wiped the floor with them. He scored a gorgeous volleyed goal at the far post, I recall, and the only thing that stopped it being a genuine, let's say, 11 out of 10 performance is the fact that to complete his hat-trick, he stepped up to take a penalty, and I'm pretty sure he hit the bar. So it could have been even better. Maybe I'm leaving a bit of room to bring in another name at one stage, and you know, we've got at least an hour for that apparently. But I think Carey Southend, top display, and it was one of many. Of course, it was one of many, but that one, is. I'd be hard pressed to find any game I've watched of Argyle where any individuals played better. I think.
Yeah, I think I forgot to mention in the intro. I think Finn, we are. I think between us, I think we're maybe 2002 onwards. So some of the older names might not get as mentioned as much. And if this goes well, we could maybe age up the panel slightly. We have a few in our locker that we could bring out, I'm sure. So anybody that springs to your mind, Finn?
Yeah, well, again from that season, you could go 2 individual performances: Kerry and Lemiras versus Bury at home. The famous game where Ryan Lowe got sent off, just toying with their fullbacks for about 40 minutes in that second half, and we were 3-0 up. It was very, very fun to watch. However, I'm going to go for his successor in a number 10 shirt. And although it might not stick in the mind for many people, I just remember, obviously, lockdown being quite a boring time. Pretty much football was the only thing that we had. And Danny Mayer versus Accrington in a 2-2 draw was unreal. Unreal. Like again, he didn't score because Danny Mayer does not score, but he was just like, that's probably one of the best, and it's one that sprung to mind straight away. Was amazing. We deserved to win that game based on his performance alone. But as that season, our defense was absolutely terrible, so we can see the 2 goals.
Yeah, absolutely. A few for those listening back on audio platforms tomorrow. A few of the comments Joe has piped in with. Bolvitas against Liverpool, just everybody that day. I don't think you could pick him out personally, but I just think all 11 on that.
Hang on, was that not when Bolvitas? I think Joe means the home game, but I think when Bolvitas came on up front as a late sub is what I think he's referring to there. And he was an absolute battering ram for the 5 minutes we lumped the ball up to him. I don't think he actually played in the away game. I think it was Songo and Bradley were the centre back pairing for that one. I think, fairly sure. Definitely was Bradley because he was winding up Emre Can, wasn't he? And I think it was Songa next to him, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Argyle tweet says Roman Lariu against Exeter in 2003, the 3-2.
2001, but yeah, little before my time, but I've seen the highlights reel. Yeah.
Little before his time, and he's pulling them up on dates immediately. This is going to go well.
Some names that have dropped up already. Paul Gallagher. Anybody got any Paul Gallagher memories?
Oh, I do. It's a bittersweet memory. That was back in the day when I was it was when I was in, and I'll get to the personal angle in a minute as to why I'm saying it. I was in year 11 at that time, which for listeners who may not be aware is the year when you are 15 turning 16 GCSE year. So I'm showing my age a little bit. And it was in the 08-09 season, of course, the one season Paul Gallagher was there on loan. And me and a few mates had a little bit of a tradition whereby, this is going to sound so bad, you had to be 16 to go on the travel club at that time. You couldn't go on the travel club if you were under 16 without an accompanying adult. So me and a few mates had a little bit of a tradition whereby one of us would go and
the adult, don't you?
What was that? Sorry.
You have to pay for an accompany.
Yeah. So yeah, very good joke. Say about the butchered execution. So it's really bad. But we had a little tradition whereby one of us would get under 16 match tickets, which to stress, we were under 16. But then one of us would go and get over 16 coach tickets. So we weren't lying about our age to get into the ground, but we were slightly overaging ourselves to get onto the coach, let's say. And for that Wolves game, which is where we were really struggling. We had like one win in about 15 going into that game, and Wolves were top of the table. My friend who was going to get that one completely messed it up, and he asked for 4 under 16 coach tickets, and then they basically sussed it out. So we didn't go to Wolves in the end, unfortunately. And then it was an away win, a very rare away win in an absolutely terrible season. Paul Gallagher scored after 28 seconds that day, and Argyle dug in and ended a very long winless run away to Wolves that day. And I was happy, but I was so bitter I couldn't be there. That's and that's the story of how I used to lie about my age to get on the travel club, which I hope to any Argyle officials listening shows my commitment to the club rather than my duplicitous nature.
Yeah. There are a few names sliding along the bottom of the screen. Just want to get some more in the comments. I think I'm just going to go to the tweets that we put out and just asking for people random names and just see what memories they spring up, because I had a whale of a time just flicking through Greens of Screen and Wikipedia and YouTube and stuff, just remembering and reminiscing. Jamie Ness, anyone?
If he wasn't a permanent sick note, he'd have gone down so much better, because that midfield he was in the second half of 17-18 with Sarcevic and Fox and every now and then Moses McCarthy was absolute quality. If you played that for the whole season, I don't think it's out of the question that we'd have gone up that year, because it satisfied everything that midfield, and Ness was the all-rounder in that. I remember, I know that it was my 21st birthday, and I think it was a Bristol Rovers game, 3-2 win. And Ness that day, did he score the first 2? I know he got a header in the game. I think he scored just after.
He scored like a ridiculous. Well, it was a deflection, but it was like a cross, but it like looped in like over the keeper.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that was part of the plan, because I loved Ness that day. What I think was pretty good about that was the fact that he, as I recall, Lamiras had just missed a penalty at that time, and a couple of minutes later, Ness has got in and scored a deflection that he absolutely totally meant, and we went on to win it with a late Carey penalty that I sense he's going to come up regularly. But Ness in that game, that was his moment. You're like, yeah, if this guy could stay fit. I see the comment on the screen that Ness is the Galloway from that era. Absolutely agree. If he could stay fit, he had all the potential to play at a higher level, and it was just a shame he couldn't. But he helped make my 21st birthday special, and I will always be thankful, no matter how it turned out at the end.
That game was literally about 2 weeks before the other Southend game that you mentioned. So March 2018 was clearly a very good time.
Yeah, I must. Yeah, my life must have peaked in that month based on the way I'm going, for sure. So, but yeah, that Ness one, I think, because ultimately he went into 18-19. He was never fully fit, and he was much worse, I think, in the midfield too, or rather, the fact he wasn't around someone like him didn't help.
Also, David Fox's legs has completely gone over the summer, I felt.
Yeah. He was. If we're saying Ness was the Brendan Galloway at the time, I think David Fox at that stage very much the Adam Forshaw of the season, where you realise, oh God, this guy can't cover an entire wing anymore when we need to defend. Didn't help Fox, by the way, and I will defend him in the sense that he, again, in a midfield 2, didn't suit him nearly as much as that absolute peak 4-3-3 did. It was let down a little by Adams, but yeah, he wasn't the same player that year. Ness probably wasn't either, but when on their day and at their time, strong.
Can I just say, I'm showing my relatively young age here by quite recent, but I know we've been promoted by the current Stoke manager, who shall not be named currently. But that run between and maybe it's the time. It was like I was probably I don't know I would have been like 14 or 15, maybe 13, and just seeing that run from where we just couldn't stop winning and we were like this relentless train is from like I don't know what the first game was, maybe Bradford at home, and then it ended at Rotherham at home.
No, Bradford at home was right in the midst of it in February. There was well, it was Bradford. It was Wimbledon away that ended the long winless run.
Right.
But then we had a little bit of a sort of inconsistent run whereby we were still very much having mid-table form, but because we were from such a handicap, if you like, going into that, we were so far behind, even despite being on a decent run of form, we were still very much in the bottom four. And then really what propelled us from being on a decent run of form and still in the bottom four to absolutely flying up through the league was the tactical adjustment of bringing Lemiris back in.
Sorry, it was the Oldham game when Ruben Lemiris.
It was.
I remember sitting in the live centre before the game and saying, "Oh my God, he's actually playing Lemiris," because all of us were like calling for it because we needed some creativity. And that run from December till I don't know April, basically was the most fun I've ever had watching Argyle.
Yeah, it was a fantastic time. In terms of like fantastic spells within seasons, I would also raise August to November of the Derek Adams promotion season, where I think we won something absolutely ridiculous, like 12 games out of 14 and drew the other two. That was starting in Notts County away, going all the way to Crewe away in November. Just an absolutely ridiculous run of form. I think we won every away game in that time and only drew 2 home games and 12 wins out of 14.
It was weird, as I remember, because I couldn't possibly have seen it coming. We started off that season with 3 games. I'm pretty sure we conceded 6 goals and didn't score. And then suddenly, like you say, Sam, we just wiped the floor with everybody after that. It was one of those runs, much like in that season where we sent Lemiris off for a trial to Oldham and then played him against Oldham, where it kind of started a run from nowhere. This was... Here we go. Sorry, that was awful for audio listeners. I apologise. I'm just looking at
there's a comment on screen. There's a comment on screen from Jack that says Wimbledon at home ended the winless run.
That was the season after. Ladapo wasn't there in the 4-3-3 season of the run to 7th. So we did have 2 long winless runs in consecutive seasons, both of which ended by games against Wimbledon. The 17-18 season, Wimbledon away, we won 1-0 and Joel Grant scored. And the following season, 18-19, we won 1-0. And Joel Grant, there we go, from the Argyle analyst. And I think if we're going to relitigate the discourse of the 2018-19 season, that's one man who we could hear his views of, certainly on another player who played central midfield that season, but we won't open that can of worms. Will we, Adam? That caused a bit of controversy at the time.
I think we might open that can of worms, but let's give it another hour.
But yes, obviously Ladapo ended the following season. Obviously, that certainly didn't result in such a good run of form at all. We had a sort of, I think, a decent-ish run after that game. We then lost to Burton and then a couple of other wins, and then we dipped down again and we picked up again over Christmas to the point we were actually top half in March, albeit only 7 points clear. And then, obviously, as we all know, dropped like an absolute stone in the final 2 months of that season, didn't win another game until the final day when it was too late.
Joel Grant, striker, he was sometimes ineffective in that run, but there were other games where he was just so fun to watch at striker. It didn't make up for losing Ryan Taylor because he was sort of the linchpin of what made Kerry and Lemiris so effective, laying the ball off and giving them space to attack the fullbacks. But Joel Grant,
Joel Grant up front. Yeah, I recall. I may be wrong. Did he start up front with Byron Moore in the opening game of the Low era? I know he definitely scored.
He did. He started off. I think the first month he was like in that striker basically, or first 2 months he was in that striker.
Yeah. Around the time when we thought Ryan Taylor was going to score 20 goals, according to Lowe himself, didn't quite happen.
It's that famous Zach Rudden handball, which somehow he inexplicably wasn't picked up, but 2 inexplicably didn't score, and then Joel Grant just hammered it in. Like
there's 3 things on that.
if you're punching a ball goalwards, it has to go in. It simply has to go in.
Why are you doing it? Because he's got a free header into an opener anyway. 2, why have you missed? Because you're using your hands like you say, it's got to go in. And 3, how the ref has not noticed that. I mean, yeah, Zach Rudden is kind of someone synonymous with a few forward or finishing failings in that first half of the low season. But yeah, the fact he can be remembered for a moment where he wasn't using his feet is probably beneficial to all of us.
Still scored the most important goal of that season if you go on points per game, which is probably the goal against Cheltenham, which was a tap-in.
Yeah, very true. They were I think 4th on points per game, weren't they? I never thought of it like that, but that's a very good point.
So what we're saying is Zach Rudden is the GOAT. Guys, promoted single-handedly, quite literally, in the case.
Who remembers Billy Clark from that season?
This is more like, this is the chat we wanted. Billy Clark. I reckon I could be here all night, genuinely all night, and you could say strikers whose surnames start with C, and I would not, still wouldn't get Billy Clark.
Billy Clark against Stevenage when Niall Canavan scored that last-minute goal. He was absolutely awful. I think that was one of his only, I think he missed a sitter in that game. And, yeah, he's just so ineffectual.
That is real obscurity, isn't it, Billy Clark? I mean, I kind of feel there are some players, like Nicholas Marin, who's just come up on screen, who have almost lost the status of being obscure because they are the go-to answer when people try and name an obscure player. I think probably Kevin Gallen comes into that category as well with Nicholas Marin. But the really obscure ones are the ones who it takes you a while to think of, even on this kind of pod.
Yeah, do we count... I can't pronounce his name. Kanalunglu and
Eugene Kangalungu.
Yeah.
Eugene Kangalungu.
And do we
yeah,
count
I mean he played for us. That was the year between the 2 title wins under Sturrock. The season we came 8th. He came in, I think the rules at that time around registering players were a lot more lax than what they are now. I think he came in as a trialist outside the transfer window. Had a couple of games as a trialist, and then I think we then extended him to the end of the season, at which point we released him. We had a lot of weird players like that season, players who just came in, played a few games, and all seemingly disappeared at the end of the season. And we kind of thought, I was only like 9 or so, but I remember me and my dad and other people who sat around us thinking, these look all right, but we never extended them. And we thought, is that a wise idea to let a lot of these go who've come in? But then we won the title the following year with 90 points, so we to argue with that.
Sorry, going back to that low season, I was just thinking, I don't want to make everyone depressed on a Sunday evening, but didn't Billy Clark start up front in that awful 4-0 loss to Exeter because we literally couldn't find the striker? Like, we spent the whole time finding a striker, and it actually resulted in us taking Luke Jeffcott back off loan, recalling him from his loan from Truro, I think, and him going on a mad run. From
that certainly is what happened. We obviously we brought him back from Truro and obviously signed Ryan Hardy, and it was those two, I think, more than anyone else who really got us over the points per game line, as it were. And I it's always, again, this is a tangent, but this whole pod is going off on tangent, so I don't mind. I always wonder what would have happened to that season if COVID hadn't hit and if we'd had the chance to play out that season, because it was
the game was Exeter, wasn't it?
We had two away games, which would have been Morecambe, because Morecambe was on the Saturday, because I was booked to go for that one, and Orient would have been on the Tuesday night. And that would have been. And then obviously Exeter would have been on Sky the following Monday night. And so that would have been 3 really pivotal games, because I felt we were just really starting to click at that time, really starting to come together. Yes, we had obviously the frustrating 0-0 draw at home to Colchester. We had the 2-1 loss at Bradford with 9 men, which was a bit of a fluke result because it was 2 red card incidences, but we actually played quite well for a lot of that game. And actually, I argued the case at the time that the Sarcevic red card at Bradford was a blessing in disguise, because I think Conor Grant got more out of the team than Sars did at that time, because I think with Sarcevic, the temptation was there to be a bit more direct, a bit more territory based, and Sarsevic's good pressing could help pick up second balls, and his sort of frenetic energy in the midfield would just sort of advance us a bit. But with Conor Grant, we sort of moved a bit more back to the passing game, got a bit more out of Danny Mayer, just calm it down a bit, dictate the tempo a bit. And as good as Sars was that season, I think Conor Grant made the team even better. And he was in for those 2 games when Sars was serving his 2-game suspension. And we absolutely dispatched with Grimsby and Macclesfield 3-0. And it was 2 of the better performances that season, really. And I think we just found our great centre-mid partnership of Mayer and Grant. George Cooper was in the absolute form of his life. And Jeff Cotton Hardy was starting to come in up front. And by the way, I'll let someone else speak in a minute, but in terms of underrated individual season performances, George Cooper that season is the absolute one that always comes to mind, because we all know it didn't work out on a permanent. He was permanently injured. He was, had other stuff going on, shall we say, in a way that's not going to be libelous. But that season he was there on loan. But bearing in mind that the season that he only signed on August deadline day, it took him probably about a month or 2 to become a regular starter, and even then he was rotated in and out of the team a bit. To get 3 goals and 12 assists in such a short period of time, I think he genuinely had about a goal or assist every 90 minutes, which completely knocks any of Carey's seasons out of the park in terms of direct goal contributions. It was just an extraordinary season from him, and then he scored 2 of the goals in that 3-0 Macclesfield game that ultimately proved to be our final game of the season. So if we're remembering random players who were brilliant, George Cooper in that curtailed season when we got promoted is one who is worth a mention in my view.
Yeah, I didn't really listen to that. I was just thinking about the 8 keepers we had.
Cheers.
No worries. Just thinking about the 8 keepers we had during was that 2017-18?
17-18 that'd be, yeah, because we ended up with mainly Remy Matthews for that run-in, as I recall.
No, I was just in my head. I was trying to remember all 8, and I just can't do that. Just can't.
Remy Matthews, Robert Tulurka, Luke McCormick, Kyle Leveron, Mike Cooper, Max Childs, Will Mannion, Kelly Roos. Thank you very much.
God, get a life, man. Get a life. In the nicest possible way. I mean it so much. Another comment that you might want to pick up on from Jack is Tumani Diagouraga was special. I feel like we are focusing on a couple of seasons here, but I couldn't bypass a comment about Diagouraga. What a man. What a player. Like, I just remember him having just such an impact in that midfield. Maybe I remember bugger all, especially compared to Sam, but I just remember him coming in. Did he come in late?
He was a free agent. He came in post-transfer window, as I recall it. And yeah, I don't think I've seen many free agent, like loan players are obviously a little different because you know they're going to be literally on borrowed time. But with free agents, you're kind of like, I think the idea, he came on a very short-term contract and we wanted to keep him well beyond that. And it kind of links in with the Berry game that I think Finn mentioned earlier, where that, as I remember, was either his last game or his second last game, and just got an ovation from the home park crowd that you kind of, to go through an old meme of ours, he's clearly waving goodbye at that point. You don't usually get that for a free agent. It's kind of a case of, well, technically you should be our permanent player and we should be able to keep you for a bit longer. The fact you're leaving us in the middle of January is a bit of a kick in the teeth. And yeah, Diagouraga, I think, was just so well.
Did he go to Fleetwood?
Yeah.
That's
It might have been
weird.
John Sheridan's Fleetwood at the time, or at least around the time. Yeah.
I mean, I get he had family in the north of England, but it's such a weird transfer.
Money.
Did you just say
that was when
Sheridan managed Fleetwood?
Yeah, he did manage Fleetwood.
I don't remember that at all.
And he did manage Diagouraga.
But Christ.
Yeah, he did manage Diagouraga at Fleetwood, but I think Diagouraga signed for Fleetwood in early. That Berry game you mentioned in January 2018 was his final game. But I think Sheridan was only appointed in the February or possibly late January, so I don't think Sheridan signed him. But I think Sheridan did then manage him when he came in. I'm fairly sure.
Correction, Sam, you are right. According to Greens on Screen, he signed for Rosler up at Fleetwood. So yeah.
Yeah, UA Rosler, that's right.
Yeah,
Finn,
it's
you wanted
really
to
never really
mention
turned, isn't
Aaron
it?
Bentley sending off against Oxford.
Rightio. So this is one of my most distinct memories as an Argyle fan, which doesn't sort of involve goals or a particular notable moment, because I'm a rugby fan, right? And I've been to some games at Plymouth Albion before.
I mean it in the nicest possible way, Finn, but please get a life.
No, I need to say this, right?
Just anybody that likes rugby they're just not high on my list of friends. Sorry.
That's all right.
What about cricket, Aaron?
Worse.
So I went to some games at Plymouth Albion around that time, and I'm pretty sure I've heard less, like, I don't know what the word is. Like, it sounded like a rugby tackle because I was right by the Lyndhurst, like the advertising board where it happened, and you could just hear the clatter as soon as he came in, and everyone was, and then I was like, no, that's a sending off, and then you got a sending off, and then I know you got to be partisan in that, but people were booing the fact that he got sent off. It's like it's the worst tackle I've ever seen on a football pitch.
Talking of clattering the hoardings, I still vividly remember Jordan Forster going head first at Barnet away into my days. Just like part of me was like, God, I hope this guy's all right, and then part of me was like, God, I hope I don't miss my train. I was like, the extra time was like 17 minutes or something up at Barnet away, and I was like, poor bloke. And then somebody else got seriously injured that day.
Brunt never came back the same player. Yeah, it's a shame for Brunt because I think in the 14-15 season, which was obviously the final season of the Sheridan where we lost to Wickham, a lot of people, including me, had kind of had him pegged as just like a big lump who, wasn't as sophisticated or artful as Ruben Reid. It was just a blunt instrument. But then he played so well against Wickham in those playoff games. And then he started the following season in Fine Fettle. And I think I realised maybe I was underappreciating him a little bit. I think I was expecting him to be a big lump. But actually, he was a really handy front-to-goal striker. He just happened to be big, of the Alan Shearer prototype. And he was having a really fine season. I mean, during Reid's long injury that season, which kept him out from about, it was about sort of November to about February, wasn't it? Or certainly November to maybe early January. Reid's long injury that he had that season, Brunt deputised magnificently in that, and it was a shame because he was really coming into the best form he'd probably been in his career, never mind just his Argyle career. And then shortly after Forster had his bad head injury, Brunt went down, did his ACL, and never came back the same player. I think he did play again because I think we extended him a year for rehab of his knee. And then at the end of that year, he still hadn't played in well over a season, so we had to let him go. I think he then went to Exeter for a bit, and he never did a lot there. And I think, and then he went to Bath City. Comment coming up from Owen saying, was that the Barnet game when Nardiello missed the sitter at the end? Worse, it's the Barnet game when Nardiello didn't even go for the sitter at the end. I still can't really explain it. I think it was Reid sort of drove in with the ball, sort of angled shot across goal, and he did one of those sort of half cross, half shots, sort of drilled it into the sort of the corridor of uncertainty, as the football cliches pod would say. And Nardiello was just there and didn't follow it in. And it really sticks in the mind because I've never really seen a striker just not go for a ball like that in the penalty area. And
I think you just didn't like Derek Adams, wasn't it? Like that was.
They had a big fallout. That's quite well known. I don't like to sort of come on the pod and start spouting about stuff I've heard that's happened in dressing rooms, but it's far enough removed now from the time that I feel comfortable saying that. Nardiello and Adams had a big bust up. I think about a week after that game, and Adams said, "Go back to Bury. You're not training with us anymore." Of course, we couldn't actually terminate the loan because that was the agreement, and it was outside the transfer window. But Adams just said, "I don't care who pays your wages. You're not training with us." So that was one of the more obscure signings of recent times.
That's an incredible shame because Dan Nardiello was so good for us. It's just such a shame that
very much the Billy Clark of his era.
Indeed.
Simon Church, if you prefer.
There's some incredible names. Simon Church. There's some incredible names being chucked in the comments. Jed Harper Penman being one of them. That's just an instant throwback. So I remember not Argyle related at all, really, but just signing him on FIFA and just like getting him to be like some like 91 rated pro, and just using him every game. That's phenomenal. But that's just a throwback to my youth that nobody else will relate to. On that, just picking up a couple of things that Sam just said, Ryan Brunt being compared to Alan Shearer, I'm sure he'll be very happy with that. And just going back to Aaron Bentley slightly, that game up at Newport away on Boxing Day, was it Aaron Bentley that should have scored an open goal?
It's a bit hard to say it was an open goal. It fell to him in the penalty area and it was blocked on the line. I remember the chance. That day was the wettest day I've ever been at a football ground. It absolutely poured it down from start to finish, and that open away end.
Actual hypothermia from that game.
I've got a rivaling game. Bolton at home. Couple of seasons ago.
We have to talk about the Ryan Broom goal, don't we?
That's got to be the wettest I've ever been, practically anywhere other than like Singapore.
Ryan Broom, what a man! I didn't realise James Bolton has joined Fleetwood, joined the Danny Mayer Ryan Broom double act up at Fleetwood. That's it's just come up on Instagram the other day. I just absolutely love just catching up with random players and just seeing where they are. Aaron Bentley got married on Thursday, so congratulations, Aaron. Very topical. Good week to
Congratulations. If any of us get married, Aaron, you feel free to come on the podcast and remind us of our worst mistakes as well. I think that's only fair if it happens.
He's having such a good week. We just want to bring him down and talk about having a good week and being brought down. Peter Swan. I mean, we've mentioned it on the pod recently. Comment here from David Searle. That interview is just absolutely phenomenal.
Can I explain it a little bit for the people who've not heard it? I feel I need to entice them. So, Argyle TV have recently launched a new feature called the Argyle Breakfast on home match days, which runs from 10 to 12. And I think it's really good. I do. I think it has an insight into all areas of the club, the women's team who played today, the youth team, the behind the scenes, former players who played for the opponents of the team, and it's a really good feature. They had, and for the whole home game, they had Peter Swan on. Now, for Argyle fans of not my generation, but a generation a little bit older than mine, and I've kind of heard it through my dad and some older fans by osmosis, Peter Swan is like a byword for like terrible signings, players with terrible attitude, players who spent too much money on. So for a little bit of context for younger fans who don't have a clue about Peter Swan, we had just come third in the league the season before. He was going to be the centre-back we were going to bring in that was going to get us over the line and get promotion. And he was a club record fee we spent on him with 350k, which at the time was a lot of money. Back in the 90s, this was. He came in and he was a complete disaster. We lost our first two home games 5-1. He fell out with all the players. He had terrible attitude. And eventually Neil Warnock binned him off at the start of the following season. He did get us out of the league, but not the way we wanted. We got relegated into the bottom tier for the first time in our history. So Peter Swan is probably known as being our most hated ever player. So with all respect to Argyle TV, it was a bit of a brave decision to have him on, great feature, but it's a bit of a brave decision to have him on. And he comes on. Erin Black, who did absolutely fantastically in the interview, by the way, she was dealt a tough hand with Peter Swan, but she did brilliantly. Kind of asked him, do you bear any resentment to Argyle? You could tell she was kind of expecting him to say no, and he goes, no, it was the worst time of my life. The fans were part of it and the players were a bigger part. and then after that, he then goes on to talk about how the house he was staying in was haunted, and how the local vet killed his dog. It was if any of you want to watch it back on Argyle TV, it is the most bizarre quarter of an hour of broadcasting I think I've ever seen. It is fantastic. And again, I want to make it very clear that the presenters did an absolutely brilliant job of it, because it was such a tough hand with some of the answers he was given. But it was bizarre, absolutely bizarre.
Is there anybody else that fits that bill of like widely hated players? Can't really think of anybody.
It's going to be the players who've left under a cloud, isn't it? Players who've left for more money, even though, let's be honest, most of us would leave our jobs for more money. Those are the ones who tend to get a bit of stick. Peter Swan was clearly a special case, wasn't he?
I do remember, it was very unfair, but it happened. The Bristol City Cup game at the start of the 17-18 season, 5-0. We just signed a Dutch goalkeeper called Robert Terloik, and I don't want to criticise him too much, but he wasn't very good. And we lost 5-0. We played awfully, and he let in about 3 goals. That were, were just routine saves. And the 2 things I remember from that game is it being so boring that the fans started chanting about the seagulls flying over the stand, and Luke McCormick's name being sung when Robert Terloik was in goal because he was so bad in that game. So
yeah, I didn't like that at all. Singing the name of another keeper just to have a go at the one who was playing. I wasn't a fan of that one bit, I have to say. And yeah, he was absolutely rubbish, but it was his first game for the club in a new country. I don't like it when you start singing names to make a point to other people. Sing for a player's name by all means, but when someone's not having a good game, to sing the name of the person who could be coming into the team in his stead was not our finest hour for the Green Army.
It's a running theme at Bristol City away, though, isn't it? After Ben Wane's miss in that.
Oh yeah, Ben Wayne had a miss in the 4-1 game last season, and people started chanting Ryan Hardy. And someone who me and Aaron both know, who will remain nameless if he is listening, when Ryan Hardy was subbed on and he missed a chance, that person started loudly chanting for Ben Wayne to annoy the people sat around him. And we won't name names, will we, Aaron? But I can see he's turned his mic off to stop laughing, and I appreciated it.
No laughs from me. I will remain emotionless on that remark. A few more. Maxime Blanchard. Anyone? What a man! I don't think there's ever been a player that's like at least emitted a vibe that he loves the club more. Like you could just imagine Blanchard just dying on like an Argyle hill just for the club. Like I just absolutely love him. I don't really remember him that much on the pitch, apart from
him and Gurrieri would always celebrate every win as if it was like a World Cup win. They'd always be jumping up and down, hugging each other, fist bumping the crowd. Remember it very clearly.
My memory of Blanchard, and I could be making it up, it could be somebody else, is when we stayed up in, I think it was one of the seasons where we just about stayed up, and at the end of the game, Rugby tackled Pilgrim Pete in celebration. That probably linked into what Sam was saying, like him and Gurrieri were committed to the cause.
Did Maxime Blanchard not score an overhead kick as well?
I was literally about to say the same thing, so maybe it was him.
Last minute equaliser against Crawley, January 2012.
Oh, I miss playing Crawley. I do. I miss playing.
Don't
Crawley.
say that.
It's all right, Aaron. Next season you'll have your way.
They're not coming up. You're having a laugh.
Rooney
has Juval Tashumu been mentioned? No, he hasn't, but he bloody has now. What a man. Is he the last player we signed from Preston? I feel like he might be. He might be the last player we ever signed from Preston at that rate.
Phil, there is one, but I can't remember.
I'll search it. You talk about Tashumu. What a man. What a boy.
I don't have loads to say on him, to be honest. He just came in. He was I think he maybe. I don't think he was all that good. If I'm honest, I think he came in and added something we didn't have. The sort of second half of that season, bit of energy,
McDonald instead.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe because I was young, but he's like the first player I remember like fans actually liking because we were so bad. And like just like the fans saying like sign him up and stuff. I don't know. That just sticks in my mind because I guess I just came in at a time where we were really bad. So, and he was the one that seemed to score a cluster of goals in that moment, particularly the 2-2 draw against Southend when we were 2-0 down and played pretty badly, and he came on and scored 2 late goals. That was quite cool.
Yeah, and you know what? Possibly wrong on this fact, but I don't think I am, because I thought about it many, many times. That 2-2 comeback draw against Southend, which was January 2012, the week after the Crawley 1-1 draw, actually. I don't think we've come back from 2 goals down at home to draw a game since then. I thought about it, and that's what challenge for the comments. since that Southend game, we've done it away many times. We've done it away to win, never mind to draw. I don't think we've come from 2-0 down at home to draw a game since January 2012. Anyone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I'd love to hear it.
I've just seen.
That'd be one way to spend my Sunday night, wouldn't it? When was the last time we came back from a 2-0 down to draw at home since 2012? Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Go on, Finn.
I'm sorry, I've just seen a comment from Argyle Live contributor Stan. He said about Stuart O'Keefe, which we have to come on to, I would think.
Oxford away, was that O'Keefe?
That shot's still going up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
still
it.
in orbit.
Other midfielders that I want to mention, somebody that played twice with Alex McDonald. Sorry, I have to get my goat in this first episode. Sir Laji Sakuna, who literally cannot be contacted at all anywhere ever because I went down a big rabbit hole.
Because he's got a restraining order out by now, I imagine.
Most probably. Trying to find myself and George Wood, who has been on this podcast, mainly in the background of Sam when he's in the kitchen. We went on a mad hunt trying to work out whether a match-worn Laji Sakuna shirt that was on eBay was actually match-worn. It turns out it wasn't because he wasn't even signed on for us that season. So why he got his name and number printed on a shirt and then tried to sell it as a match-worn one, we'll never know. Somebody else that played with them both, Paul Bignot. He made the thumbnail for tonight's YouTube show. I think he might be one of the worst players I've ever seen play for Argyle.
What just sticks in my mind is him spitting in somebody's face. I don't
remember that. So let's move on.
No, I don't think he didn't do that. He kicked out at someone off the ball, I think, was what he got sent off for at Stourbridge.
Right, sorry. If that's a
sorry if you're watching, Paul.
He definitely kicked out someone off the ball and got a red card. That was in the 2-0 loss away to Stourbridge in our prequel game, if you like, to the 1-0 loss.
I think I got mixed up with the time where Marcus Maddison went on Twitter and
he accused Sonny Bradley of doing so, didn't he?
Yeah,
but it was never proven.
He had an online spat rather than a physical spit. Maybe you're getting him confused with Perry NG. I know that you like Cardiff, Finn, but less spoke about him.
Do you remember when Perry NG and Danny Mayer nearly had a scrap at full time in the first game of the low era at Crewe away? Anyone remember that?
Yeah.
Perry, Fanzines.
Well, I remember we were
scissor kick thing.
Yeah, but it was the final whistle. We just won 3-0 with a late goal going our way to seal the game. We were all jumping around celebrating, and Perry and G must have said something that Danny Mayer really took exception to, because Danny Mayer had both hands around him in retaliation. I was worried he was going to get a red card after the final whistle, but thankfully the referee, I think, just came over and calmed it all down. But yeah, Perry and G's one of those players you'd absolutely love if he's on your team, but he's an absolute expletive if he's not.
If only we had a podcast with Danny Mayer in which you could have asked him what he said, Sam. Maybe that's it's.
Yeah, so that's a good point. That's a good point. Now I wish I'd remembered that.
Yeah,
but if any of you haven't listened to our My Argyle Life of Danny Mayer, do so. It is, if I may say so, my favourite one of all of those that we've done.
Yeah, as you say at the end of all of our My Argyle Lives. Mike Blackmore has suggested Robbie Williams.
Let me entertain you. Every time he came on the pitch was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
Was Robbie Williams peak banter era, or was that just after peak banter era? How are we defining peak banter era?
Oh, it was very much in peak banter era timescales. I think he was.
No, but I mean specifically playing "Let Me Entertain You" as Robbie Williams came on. Even
true.
You know. Even he came on at half time once, didn't he? We played it then as well. Like that is, for me, that is like peak banter era of Argyle. Like it does not get much better than that. Should we talk about Martin Fulger has said, just tuned in. Anybody mentioned Taribo West? Yeah, Sam, you're a man that's seen the highlights and the YouTube.
Well, I watched him play. It was only 05 Taribo. I watched him. Yeah, he came in for pre-season. put in some very good performances in pre-season away to Torquay and perhaps more impressively against Club Brugge. And we thought he was going to be this really classy defender. Then on the eve of the season, it turned out he couldn't play because he didn't have a proper work visa or something. And only Argyle, honestly. And it took us a few weeks to get his visa sorted. And then I think we probably rather wish we hadn't when he did play, because he was absolutely shocking, considering he looked so good in those low-tempo pre-season games. You could tell his legs were clearly gone. All of his 32 years of life, as it was at the time, had given him a tough paper round, clearly, because he was running like somebody much older than his age, if I may insinuate something. But he was shocking, and I think Tony Pulis came in and got rid of him straight away. There were a few who Pulis, I think Nuno Mendes, the Portuguese centre-back, he was another one who I think looked good in pre-season, but pretty disastrous in reality. And I think Bjarni Gudjohnsen, who Pulis, I think he got rid of him at Stoke. And then by pure luck, Pulis had appointed to Argyle where Bjarni Gudjohnsen was, and I think he got rid of him as well. He came in and sort of cleared a lot of these sort of underperforming players of the Bobby Williamson era. Yeah, the comment that Norwich away on Sky West got hauled off, and I think that was his last league game that he played for us, if I'm not much mistaken.
Yeah, Adam, going from some of the worst players that played for us, or to some of the best: Brian Chambers, Sylvan Ebanks-Blake. Don't really need to say much more. Take it away.
No, yeah, I first remember hearing of him. There was a newsagent on Royal Parade, I believe, had a board outside saying Argyle signed Man United striker, and 20 years later we ended up getting Wayne Rooney, so that was fun. But at the time, yeah. Spoiler alert: I'd not heard of Sylvan Ebanks-Blake, and I was of the age where I thought
that's shocking from somebody who does our new signing previews.
It is, yeah. And if I could go back to myself 18 years ago, I'd be scolding myself no end, I assure you. I was of the age where I was impressionable by big clubs and thought, oh well, he's come from Man United, he must be successful. We know that's not always the case, but Sylvan Ebanks-Blake was very much one of those. One of my weird memories of him, I recall us playing, I think it was Preston at the time, and we scored a couple of late goals. 1-2-0. There was a penalty, I think it was. Sean St. Ledger, maybe, just catching the ball in the box, something like that. Yeah, lovely. And honestly, the Sam approval just comforts me every time. And I think in that game, watching Ebanks-Blake and Hales, it was just like, this is just... We've used it before. It's the top men that we had. It felt like we had a genuine strike partnership at the time in that game. Now, again, it's from an era where I look back and go, okay, maybe I've nostalgized this a bit, because an Ebanks-Blake and Hales partnership possibly wasn't something that was successful week in, week out. But yeah, just him there. It was a sort of signing along the sign time of the season. And of course, it was one of those where the fact that the team had performed so well that year obviously helped his cause. But it was the kind of signing where it was like, yeah, we've arrived now. Like, gone are the days of the signings of, I don't know, Tariba West and all that lot, or it seemed like a bit of chances on this stage. Like, Sylvan Ebanks-Blake was the sort of player who made me feel like we belonged. And yeah, I think we're possibly still chasing that feeling now at championship level, but way back then it was nice and it was comforting, and I enjoyed him very much.
I wasn't around in that era, but I just remember seeing it a couple of years ago, and I think it's on YouTube. I've got to mention it, but the late great Gordon Sparks tearing into Dion Dublin on live radio at Norwich away. I think the famous game where Akos Bazaki scored 2 free kicks. I just have to mention that, as obviously, just very funny.
Finley Allen and myself both, handshake emoji, have to mention Norwich. Is in there. Somebody else, Finn, somebody you definitely would have seen. Surely you're not that young. Bradley Wright Phillips.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of my first fun memories with Argyle was the 2-0 game against Exeter. And I think he scored both goals in the league. And that was, I think that's probably 2010. So it's fantastic. And I remember, that was one of the first teams I watched. I think my favourite players were Joe Mason, Yannick Bolasie, just because he was fun to watch, even if he didn't have any substance at that time. And Bradley Wright Phillips. We had such a good team. Really, if you look at that, we should have been doing better than 15th even before we got the points deduction. We had some really good players in that, noticeably like Kari Arneson, who went on to do really well and stuff. So,
players that
I think I've said it in tangential discussions.
Don't you dare, Sam. Players also in that pool include Yannick Bolasie. Go on, Sam. Now you can.
I was just going to say that I think I've mentioned it tangentially on previous pods, and now's a really good time for it. That team should just never have gone down on man for man alone, because the team we had for that, certainly that first half of the season before we lost all our players, Noon and Bolasie on either wing, Wright Phillips and Mason as our striker options. I mean, we even had Marcel Sipe. Now, I know that was long after he'd stopped giving a proverbial, but my goodness, Marcel Sipe, for the first 18 months of his tenure, was probably one of the best defenders in the Championship for my money. I mean, of all the players who everyone gets doughy-eyed about of that era, how Mosi, Banks, Blake, it's Sipe for me. He was a defender, but he had absolutely everything you'd want as a defender. He was pretty quick for defenders of that time. He was incredibly strong.
How close is he to when Joe called Lewis Gibson the best defender he'd ever seen or something after Southampton? How much above that was he?
It's tough to say, because I do think the Championship is a stronger league now than it was when we were last in it. But in terms of relativity to the rest of the league, night and day. Gibson's a solid player for this league, but Sipe was just absolutely commanding in virtually every game, and his head was in the right place. I think he
absolutely loves a thumbs up as well.
Yeah, Look, it all went very bad. He had multiple fallings out with Paul Sturrock. I think he was a bit of a, shall we say, a proxy war in the internal machinations between the faction of the board of which his father-in-law was part of and the alternative faction of the board. I think he was used as a bit of a chess piece between that. He didn't get on with the manager. He was prone to throwing his toys out of the pram a little bit, I think would be fair to say. And I think he had a couple of ruckuses in Plymouth Town Centre that he was up in front of the magistrates for, and I think he had other demons as well, which a lot of people do. But I think it's such a shame, because in terms of pure talent, he was an incredible defender. He had everything. He could play the ball out, which for that era, defenders weren't meant to play the ball out. Defenders were meant to get in the way and lump it. But he could play the ball out brilliantly. He could tackle. He could head. He always knew where to be. He would lead from the back. And if he just had a bit of a better attitude and a bit of a better approach to the game and perhaps to his diplomatic relationships with other people, he could have played Premier League. And it's a shame he had to drop off. He did, because he was just magnificent. He was absolutely magnificent. And I just remember back in the day when obviously Paul Sturrock took over from Holloway and Sturrock never got on with Sipe. I remember Sturrock would be yelling instructions to Sipe on the touchline, and Sipe would be there yelling back, kind of giving it verbals back to Sturrock during the game. And because as much as when he was good, he was very, very good. When he was bad, he was absolutely awful. And I think when he checked out mentally under Paul Sturrock, he had some absolutely horrific games. But anyway, that's my standard 2-minute segment of how Marcel Sipe was absolutely brilliant, but should have been even better. I had to get that one in there in a nostalgia pod. So moving on.
Talking of nostalgia, Owen brings up Kari Arneson's goal away at MK Dons. Like we've had some good trips to MK Dons, but that goal, absolutely phenomenal. Somebody earlier, where was it? Somebody brought up Alex Bray. I can't find the comment. It's just that. How long was he on the pitch for, Sam? But he just gave me so much
11 minutes, I think it was.
So much belief in that 11 minutes that he's going to be an absolute baller. And it's such a shame to see how how
The way
how it
he
ended. But
ruptured his ACL and came back on to try and run it off. I think he'd be the first ever, that's for sure. And my memory of that is because it links into another one of our many goats when we look at that game at Luton away. But as Don Blizzard put the ball into that bottom corner and the team were running off to celebrate as Alex Bray is just rolling around in agony on the floor. Like, well, yeah, I mean, he's committed to the cause, but I think we were a little bit more interested in the goal we just scored at the time. But it was
because Bray was involved in that, wasn't he? He sort of belted down the wing with the ball, passed it to Ruben Reid, and his knee went as he was passing it. Reid sort of flicked it to Lee Cox, who laid it inside to Blizzard, who sort of danced through a couple of players and
You
scored.
have to remember, we have to talk about Lee Cox and that particular tweet on the Argyle account. That is folklore.
I'm not going to get over it though, because Lee Cox number 7 just wasn't right. It's like that sort of position, number 7.
But it was better than Lee Cox number 10, which was his first loan spell. That was even weirder.
Yeah. I know. We've kind of had Matt Butcher do similar. Yeah. If Lee Cox could do squad numbers as well as he did football in that age, we'd be in for a great time.
Did we play away at Swindon and Lee Cox was named on their bench and then he signed for us again the day after? Is that Lee Cox?
No, because Lee Cox signed for us again in the summer.
Another midfielder called Lee, around that era, Ollie Lee. I think he was quite good. No, but he got a sending off at Exeter when Ruben Reid scored that hat trick, which, by the way, needs to be mentioned more in who scored a hat trick with Plymouth Argyle against Exeter. That is just like, I know some fans were obviously disappointed with him when he went to Exeter, but Ruben Reid, I mean, he's a fantastic player in a string of very poor sides.
I did not know that Ollie Lee was the brother of Elliot Lee. So that's a fact that I've just learned from a quick Google. So who's now at Wrexham with Mr. Scar and Mr. Burton.
And I think they're the son or the nephew of former Newcastle player Rob Lee, are they not? I believe.
Son, yeah. Well, I
Sons of,
Disco. I don't have the brain capacity to remember many individual games, but all 3 of those goals at MK Dons were worldies, I believe. #Disco. Like that. Zach Brown, Connor Grant was an unsung hero. John Simmons, I'm very sorry, I'm just going to call you John, has asked, can you guys please talk about that Scott Sinclair goal in the FA Cup at Barnet? Have we mentioned that, or is that just something that I thought I mentioned for the debut?
We mentioned Barnet away, but that was the Forster Brunt occasion. Yes, I don't remember us doing the Scott Sinclair one. Another one to link to Ebanks Blake, I think, where it's kind of his arrival was very much and the way he played was like we belong here moment. This is great. We've got one of these guys who's clearly fit for second tier level, and he obviously went on and unlike many others who made me feel that way, went on to some very good things. That goal at the FA Cup final. I recall weirdly his goal. I think it must have been in the next round against Derby. He scored a header. I think it kind of links back to the very start of the podcast. Did Kevin Gallen open the scoring that day? Sam, I'll defer to you.
Sorry, which game was this?
The 2-0 against Derby in the FA Cup. The round after penalty. The Barnet game. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were still. I thought you were still on the Barnet game. The Barnet game was Al Joffrey. Round after Kevin Gallen scored a penalty, and then we got another penalty about 10 minutes later that would have put us 2-0 up, but he missed it, or it was saved anyway. Yeah. So, and I think that was Gallen's only goal for us, I believe, that penalty. And then, missed another one shortly after, and it was a Scott Sinclair headed goal that was the second that day. And anyone know who was sent off for Derby that day? Who went on to manage a promotion rival of ours?
Yeah, I reckon you know. Yeah,
Darren Moore.
There we go. Yeah.
Were you going to say that anyway?
I was going to say him, to be fair. Yeah. And what the other guy I remember from the opposition side, much less interesting, is that second penalty. I think Stephen Bywater saved it. So
that's right.
There's another non-Argyle name to throw in. But anyway, I wouldn't have gone down the Bywater route had I had the chance to say more. So yeah, your fact's far more interesting.
Sam, you are wrong. Kevin Gallen scored twice for us. He only got one goal in the cup. But against who did he get his other goal? Come on.
Got a league goal, did he?
Yeah. The Football League Championship. The venue was Home Park. The team was Luke McCormick, Paul Connolly, who we'll get onto in a minute because there's a comment about him. Marcel Sipe, Hasni Al Joffrey, Gary Sawyer, David Norris, Akos Bazaki, who was replaced by Sylvani Banks-Blake, Lillian Nallas, who hasn't even been bloody mentioned yet. What a buy. Peter Howe-Mosey, Scott Sinclair, Kevin Gallen started that game up front with Barry Hales, who was replaced by Kiwi legend, that is Sir Rory Fallon.
I mean, yeah, unfortunately the team doesn't help me greatly because I know that Kevin Gallen was only there for that half season in the second half of the 06-07 season, so I know that team would have been players around that time. I struggle to remember him getting a goal.
On Wikipedia, it says for Kevin Gallen, 13 appearances, 1 goal. However, I did up.
That'll be the one league goal, won't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I did look up Ryan Law earlier because it was his birthday today. Happy birthday to Ryan Law.
Happy birthday, Ryan Law.
Thank you for the goal at Birmingham. So I looked at Ryan Law and it said he only had 1 goal, but obviously he had the goal against Sheffield Wednesday and the goal against Birmingham.
Yeah, no, Wiki only gives league goals. So, I don't doubt Aaron's right. He will have scored one. It's just something that even my big brain hasn't remembered. Was it Barnsley, the 4-2 defeat? I'm not confident.
No, 3-2 home win against Coventry City. Harold.
Monday night game on Sky, 20th of January, 07.
22nd of January. God, get better, man.
Amateur.
I'm going to butcher this name. Harold. We're going to call you Harold. Sorry, Harold. A bit upset that the fact that 0 Norwegians have ever played for Argyle. But if anybody of you know who was born in Norway,
Peter Capaldi.
Peter Capaldi. You mean Tony Capaldi?
Tony Capaldi. That's the one.
Yeah.
Not Doctor Who. No.
And I think Oscar Frelkeld has Norwegian heritage as well, I suppose. With a name like Frelkeld, you probably would expect a bit of Norwegian heritage. Yeah.
You're slipping here, Sam. I don't want some of these these incorrect facts that you keep spitting. Can you fact check that for us?
I'm sure Oscar Frelkeld has Norwegian heritage. I'm 99% on that.
Can you fact check that while I go to either Adam or Finn? I think it's time. I think it's time we mention him from one great nation in Norway to another. Argyle Tweets asks, can we have a segment on Kenny Cooper? I just remember I have a vivid image of the back page of the Herald in which I don't remember what it said, something about signing Kenny Cooper, but the picture of him in that old school round badge sat in front of that old media centre, him signing it, just so buzzed that this man is going to come in and just score like a goal a game striker. Like I was so confident that this big stocky bastard was going to be like the answer to all of our prayers, and he was in a way. It
depends what you're praying for, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're praying for financial ruin, he would have helped on the way. Yeah, I remember. Again, it's one of these memories where I may be completely wrong, but I thought we'd had a cracking day bringing in Kenny Cooper at the same time that we signed Damian Johnson. I thought, hello, yeah, here's some pedigree that's coming into the club, and both were unmitigated disasters. Cooper didn't. I'd say he's at least the 3rd best Cooper I've seen play for Argyle, I think. But I imagine there's someone out there who could bump him down to 4th.
Yeah, obviously.
No, the late great Steve Cooper, who sadly died far too young at 39, was before my time. But I'm sure he would bump Kenny Cooper down to. Yeah, there we go on the screen now. He would bump Kenny down to 4th, and certainly him, Mike Cooper, and George Cooper being the top 3 in some combination. I think going back to the very first question, Mike Cooper at Chelsea has got to be up there for best individual performances as well. How brilliant he was that day.
Dan Scar was pretty good as well, pocketing Lukaku.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely think you could Lee Cooper. There's another one, so I think Kenny's now down to 5th at best. I think that there were genuinely 4 players who you could make a case had a 10 out of 10 game that day. Cooper and Scar, as mentioned. Gillespie, the goal scorer, had a magnificent game defensively as well. And Jordan Houghton absolutely ran the midfield against his old club for large spells of it.
We were unbelievable in that extra time, by the way. We played them off the park in that extra time. Seriously, we were so
We
good.
were really knocking on the door. I mean, look, obviously for the bulk of the game, as you would quite naturally expect from a home team in the Premier League chasing a goal, obviously Chelsea were on top for the vast bulk of it. We defended absolutely fantastically, but we weren't absolutely dominating the game. Sorry, I just dropped my phone. I've had a DM come through from someone who I think would rather remain nameless, otherwise just put it in the comments, has told me that I was wrong about the 2 goals down fact, because last season of all times, we were 2-0 down at home to Birmingham City and drew 3-3. Of course we were 2-0 down and 3-1 down, I think, weren't we? So yeah, against of all people, Wayne Rooney's Birmingham. So I got that wrong. It can be known, but I think I started thinking about that Southend fact, whether that was the last time before the Birmingham game happened, and then I think I just never mentally registered that broke the streak. So if anyone could name a time between Southend in January 2012 and Birmingham in December 2023, then please don't. Yeah, please keep it to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. There is another Cooper that played for Argyle. Thank God for Greens on Screen. What an absolute brilliant resource. He was here for 7 days and played 3 games. Born in Lambeth. Anybody know? I guess. No, that's what I thought. He came from Wimbledon, went to Crawley. David Cooper signed for us in 1991 as a 20-year-old. Some boy. Yeah.
So, based on the fact that he had 3 appearances, surely Kenny Cooper is above David Cooper?
No.
No?
That's not how this works, Finn.
I think Kenny. Thing is with Kenny Cooper is it wasn't just how little he played; it was just so bad when he did play. Like, he genuinely managed to make some really bad strike options even worse. And with Damian Johnson, we spent a lot of money on him, and whoever sanctioned giving him a 2.5-year contract, that should have been the resignation for that alone on the wages we were paying him, or allegedly paying him. But at least Damian Johnson did okay when he played. I don't think he made us much better than we already were, but at least he put in some solid 6 out of 7 out of 10 games a lot of the time, you know? Kenny Cooper actively made us worse. We genuinely would have done better just sticking with Rory Fallon and Joe Mason rather than wasting time giving minutes to Kenny Cooper. He was really dreadful. And I think I will give him the benefit of the doubt, saying that he wasn't remotely fit rather than that he wasn't bothered. I think, but it was not pretty, whatever it was.
Another player that just popped into my head, because I remember the goal line clearance, which was coincidentally Mike Cooper's debut, was Aaron Taylor Sinclair. Yeah, just that is probably the best goal line clearance I've ever seen.
It was
Argyle
weird group of we seem to have an unusual number of double-barreled surname left-backs with Taylor Sinclair, Ashley Smith-Brown, Tariq Holmes-Dennis. There's fertile ground there. If there's another double-barreled left-back out there who wants to come in and make Billy Mumba's spot his own, well, good luck first of all, but I think I might have found a home for you.
Yeah, I love anybody with a double-barreled name, to be honest. They almost feel too posh to be playing football. It's a working men's game, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, Paris Cowan Hall wasn't left back, but again, just Paris Cowan Hall. Those song sheets given out by the Forza Verde of You're My Cowan Hall. What a throwback that is. Tried to get that going at Watford away and nobody wanted to join in.
And all the runs that Gorman makes are blinding was one of the lines in that as well. Johnny Gorman.
Yeah, the 3-0 game against Portsmouth when they were in admin, that was Johnny Gorman.
Oh, absolutely class. Joe Lennox has just popped into my head as well.
That goal at Exeter, fair play to him.
What a time to be alive. One player I want to mention is most probably the first. This is most probably aging my Argyle timeline a bit, but the first player I fell in love with in an Argyle shirt has to be Jamie Mackey. I think he's often like forgotten about in the conversation. I appreciate his goal record, wasn't the best, but he was just a player that I think often gets overlooked in the niche of.
Well, he doesn't now because he's on Sky talking about us all the time when we play.
Yeah, I think the reason he's maybe not as well remembered. I'm not saying he's misremembered, but Argyle fans, because he calls us Plymouth, I think maybe that's part of the reason why. Does it call us Argyle, which people seem to love for some reason. Not quite sure why.
What about the second best daily to ever come from? Well, to ever be, what's it called? Not related, but yeah, related.
2 goals on his debut, Mackie.
He did. It was a 3-0 home win against Barnsley on the 12th of February 2008. That game was also famous for Paul Watton making an appearance off the bench in a return from a 15-month injury layoff.
I'm just gonna Google that, but yeah, go on, because you've been wrong about a couple of things, Sam.
12th of February 08.
Yeah.
Jamie Mackie in, hang on, I want to say minutes 78 and 80. I think he scored in about that, give or take.
Hang on, green screen doesn't tell me that on this page, but you are right. Tuesday, the 12th of February.
And I think Steve McLean got the first one, if I want to say rightly.
No, he did.
Steve McLean scored for Argyle.
I mean, no. To be fair, he's come up in the comments a bit about funny memories of Steve McLean giving it the up yours to the Devonport end.
I mean, that's literally my next question. So you can run with that if you like. Josh Pitcher, Steve McLean. What's everybody's favourite memory? Mine was his equaliser versus QPR and the throwing the up yours to the Argyle.
When he left is probably the answer. Steve McLean is a bit of like a conspiracy rabbit hole player, not in the sense of sorting off the field stuff, but in the sense of he was always, under Paul Sturrock and at Cardiff and historically, a poacher. He was a pure poacher who played back in the era of 4-4-2 next to a big man up front, right? For some reason, he came in at Argyle and we started doing all this fancy stuff of dropping him deep and trying to make him into a playmaker. And Paul Sturrock said to the media, well, that's how he wants to play. But for one, why does he want to play there? Because that was, he was always a poacher. And two, you're the manager, playing where you think he's good. So that was a bit of an odd one.
Who played like up front instead of him then?
Oh, any number. Jermaine Easter, Rory Fallon, Wright Phillips for a bit, and any combination of the above.
So
Alan Gow.
Wright Phillips is probably better than
my lord
anyway, though, right?
Yeah, he was, but it was just weird that there was McLean was one of those players who was really polarising. You had the people who just said he's rubbish, what a waste of money, and then you had the people who said, oh, actually, there's times where he's quite an intelligent player, he brings others into play. And I think the latter camp kind of had a point, but also I don't know why he wasn't playing to his strengths, which was in the penalty box, because if you look at where he thrived for Paul Sturrock at Sheffield Wednesday and elsewhere, that was where it was. And for whatever reason, he maybe fancied reinventing himself a bit, but he wasn't very good at the reinvention. And whilst he did have some good moments in terms of bringing other players into play, his off-the-ball movement in terms of effort and sort of tracking and pressing was incredibly negligible, I would say. And I don't think he was a bad guy, because I think he did a lot of good stuff for the club off the pitch. He coached the under-13s. I know that was quite widely reported at the time. And I think he was frustrated that he was seen as this villain within the city when, in his view, he was being misused. But then it all culminated in a 1-1 draw at home to QPR, where he scored the equalising goal and went and gave it the up yours signal to the Devonport end, who'd been giving him a bit of verbals beforehand. And that resulted in quite a bit of contention that one of our players was given that to our own fans.
I just remember him scoring against Cheltenham.
No, he scored four Cheltenham against us. Yeah,
four Cheltenham, and then did basically the same thing to Devonport end about 5 years later.
Yeah, that was even more so, because obviously he scored from a direct free kick about 25 yards out and then ran over and gave it last to them. And I remember I was sat in the Lyndhurst that game, and I remember the Devonport had a belting chorus of I'll say the word because Aaron's inadvertently said worse already. A belting chorus of Steve McLean. No, sorry, how shit must you be? You've got Steve McLean, and just seeing Steve McLean stood in the touchline with the biggest grin on his face that he was getting abused from our home fans. And I think we gave him exactly what he wanted that day. I think he fully got inside our heads, and I think we got inside his head as well.
Yeah, and obviously not played for Argyle, but similar. I used to absolutely love playing Morecambe just for the abuse that Kevin Ellison used to love receiving as well. What a man! I don't know why he's getting a mention on this pod.
Are we Roche?
So there's a comment from Lee, not from Lee Martin. If it is Lee Martin, come on the pod. Talk about your 12 games in which he scored 2 goals. Obviously mentioning Norwich at home yet again. He currently plays for Chris Errington's, I want to say local side, but the side closest to where he was born, Ramsgate. I know he went on a bit of an FA Cup run last year, which is the only reason I know why Lee Martin is at Ramsgate. But if anybody wants to talk about Lee Martin, if not, we can talk about Lewis Alessandra or both. Yeah, that's good then. Adam, is that Birmingham away in the League Cup, similar to Ryan Law, but just a different cup competition and a bit later.
A
bit earlier, you mean?
And it was a bit later in the game. It's called later on.
Right? Yeah.
Also, we didn't win that one.
But wasn't Ryan Law in extra time?
Did we win it?
We
No.
didn't. 3-2. Kyle Bartley scored against us in extra time, I believe. Yeah. But Alessandra scored a couple of equalisers, including a stoppage time, if I remember.
And the Ryan Law one was in extra time, so actually no, it was not later in the game.
Shut up, Sam.
I said it as well, to be fair. So
yeah, but you're not a brain box fan. Sorry.
Alessandra. I mean, I liked him, and I think that partnership he had with Reid at one time, at least when they were both fully fit, was very nice for that level. Although I can't help but make my main memory of Lewis Alessandra being I watched the 0-0 at Oxford away, sitting next to his wife or girlfriend at the time. I don't know, his wag at the time, and pretty much confirmed to me that he wouldn't be coming back next season. So that was a somber moment, considering I was a fan of his. Almost as somber as the absolute dour game that was happening on the field. But Alessandro himself, he, I think he's one of those. Go on.
I just searched him on Greens on Screen. 100 games, 25 goals. That's an impressive return.
He's one of those that I think early on you'd say, he's a lot of people liked him because he was quote unquote a trier. He was one of the players whose style of play you saw him running around quite a lot. His numbers are a lot better than that, as you say, Aaron, to be fair. Yeah. And I think I've mentioned the partnership with Reid, which was excellent at times. Alessandro was very, very good at winning penalty kicks. Like, he just knew exactly where to stick his leg in front of a defender to make sure he got kicked over. I remember one against Portsmouth, one against Cheltenham, as I remember, right in front of the end. It's just like, he's one of those where you could consider very naughty or you could consider very clever, depending on your preference. But it was a skill of his, for sure.
I don't know if I misremembered it, but he played against us a few times after he left, and he always seemed really determined to score against us, but never actually did. Like,
it's because he loves the badge.
Yeah, it's one of those players.
Deliberately not sticking the ball in the goal because he just loves the greens. Yeah, I remember Swindon away, in which Dean Smalley scored. I remember there being like hardly anybody there. Was that that must have been a Tuesday night?
Was it that game? That last minute penalty that Dean Smalley scored against Stevenage, and then Wesley just went on a massive rant. Yeah.
I wasn't the biggest fan of John Sheridan, certainly in his final season. I know that's blasphemy to Aaron, but I did like the fact that John Sheridan. My favourite thing about John Sheridan by far was he clearly absolutely had zero time for Graham Wesley as a manager or a person. Like, I remember when Graham Wesley went off on a tirade about being bullied by referees, and then he had a moment where Tyler Harvey sort of ran or sort of bundled off the pitch and nearly sort of ran into Graham Wesley, and Graham Wesley gave him a little shove away, and he was quoted afterwards saying that he was fearful for his safety. against Tyler Harvey. And then when Sheridan was asked about it, one of my favourite ever John Sheridan sort of nonchalant comments was, oh, he was getting bullied by Tyler, was he? I don't really listen to anything he says.
I suppose you would be fearful for your safety if you spent most of your time lifting imaginary weights, but that's another issue.
This is very true. And again, Danny Mare's My Argyle Life, he gives the inside track on the imaginary weights. It's worth it.
Sam's favourite My Argyle Life. Go and give it a listen if you haven't.
Yeah, but the difference is, Aaron, I say it to everyone to be polite. Danny Mare actually was my favourite. I can put that on record.
Absolutely brilliant. There's a couple here mentioning the Pattersons, Rory and Jim. I just want to get in my little thing. When I went to Tavistock College, Jim Patterson either lived in Tavistock or was a really big fan of Tavistock Library, because I used to see him weekly in the library at Tavi when I used to go there to an after-school club. And basically it got to the point where I would only go just to talk to Jim Patterson, because I knew he'd be there like clockwork every week on a Wednesday after school.
Really nice guy, Jim Patterson. Really nice guy by all accounts.
Nice guy. I can imagine there was a point where he stopped turning up. I can imagine he switched days, because he was most probably like, this kid, I'm going to talk to him, but he's really annoying. Please leave me alone. So there's my Jim Patterson anecdote. And for that reason alone, I stood by him. I wouldn't let anybody slag him off at all. Rory Patterson, on the other hand, anybody?
Yeah, he came in that sort of summer. We got relegated into League One after scoring about a gazillion goals in the Northern Irish League. And I was a little sceptical, because the Northern Irish League is considerably worse than the League of Ireland. And, well, the League of Ireland has not exactly fared brilliantly for us there. I'll get there in a minute, Aaron, don't worry. Rory Patterson came in, and I think he scored 4 goals that season. It didn't help that Peter Reid tried to play him as a wide midfielder in a 4-2-3-1, which, with all due respect to Reedy, watch his My Argyle Life as well, by the way. Just saying, that's probably my second favourite. Which, with all due respect to Reedy, I don't think was the right role for Rory Patterson. But yeah, irrespective of him being out of position, he wasn't very good. I think he was a bit off the pace. He was I say this as a very rotund man myself. He wasn't quite the right shape, I think, to be a professional footballer, and he just wasn't capable of making the step up from Northern Ireland to League One. And I think he left quite shortly after that one relegation season he was with us. So has to go down as a miss rather than a hit. But as Tom says in the comments, great free kick at Dagenham away.
Yeah, there's a name that's been mentioned by Charles. I won't give him his full name. Joe was adamant that this man has to be mentioned, and I wanted to wait until somebody mentioned it in the comments. David McNamee. I remember I went to Coventry away. I couldn't tell you when, but I went up with my cousin and my uncle, and it was like one of my first away days. And I don't know why, but basically just spent 90 minutes just singing David McNamee's name. Could just be in my head.
Was it to the was it to the tune of Give It Up?
Give It Up.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad I haven't just imagined that my whole life.
No, well, I don't know, but I just popped into my head. How would you sing that name? And then David McNamee. Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal.
My main memory of David McNamee, and this is probably a bit unfair, is from the era when we were really, really terrible, when we only got like 2 points out of the first 9 games under Paul Sturrock, was a Tuesday night at home to Watford. David McNamee gets a throw in and just throws the ball out of play, and it just kind of bobbles along and then goes out for another throw in without anyone else touching it. And it was only the second worst throw in I could ever remember from an Argyle player. I'll let Adam take the other one.
Yeah. No one's mentioned Safari Moore. I think that one seems to be more in a sense of we were in a bad way. It was Shrewsbury away. Interestingly, we, as I recall, just come on into it off the back of a win. I can't for the life remember who it was against, but I'm pretty sure Ladapo scored a couple of goals. Yeah, don't know. But we went to Shrewsbury just finally with some points on the board, and we're completely outplayed. But the moment that will live forever is Tafari Moore Go on, Sam. Have you found
I
out
just-
who?
Fleetwood,
Fleetwood,
2-1
tell
win.
me.
I just remember your tweet that you put out with the actual gif of him doing it. It's so
Yeah,
good.
I almost felt like I had to put it out because I felt my eyes were deceiving me. The fact that he managed to somehow throw the ball without throwing it 2 feet in front of him, and then for some reason start complaining as if the ref's done him dirty or something for the fact he's thrown the ball in front of his feet. And yeah, strange time. I'm glad he was
I
a
mean,
lovely
we were
bloke
so
based on the
bad. It kind of
comments.
just summed us up, didn't it?
It did, and a lot of the comments was like, "Yeah, you wonder why Plymouth Argyle are down there. This is why." Yeah, he was. I know earlier on, I was mentioning the signing from Man United of Sylvain Ebanks-Bain. I was like, "Oh, we're signing players who've previously been at Man United. This might be good." And I was at that age. Safari Moore, ex-Arsenal, did not hit those same heights, and yeah, it's not a surprise that his career's worked out the way it has.
He was weirdly, I say weirdly because of what came afterwards, but weirdly quite good on loan for Wickham, wasn't he, before us?
Yeah, he was, wasn't he? I admittedly don't recall seeing much of him at Wickham, but I mean,
he won a penalty in his first home game and got man of the match, and it was all downhill since then.
Oh, and
Yeah.
by the way, that was an absolutely horrendous dive. Also, the same game where Chris Powell and Derek Adams had a tussle in the technical area.
First ever
That's
manager to be
right.
sent off or actually receive a red card.
Derek Adams, of course it was. Yeah, something was definitely verbals were exchanged that
Sorry,
day
should I
for
say
sure.
the best manager outside the Premier League, not just Derek Adams?
The self-proclaimed best manager outside the Premier League, according to Steve Evans. Yeah, but
If it winds up Steve
then
Evans, it's good enough for me.
but then according to Steve Evans, he paid all his taxes, so you can't take what he says too.
Brilliant. That's all the ad revenue going on some legal case. There to balance that argument about Tafari Moore. Cordy says I met Tafari Moore in B&M. He's a lovely bloke. So at least that's something. I had to get in that. I just looked at that away game at Coventry in which I said about David McNamee. Didn't even play. So God knows why. We don't even, maybe we just loved him for some reason. A 1-1 draw in which Kari Arneson scored in the 45th minute. So yeah, that's good. John Simmons, didn't we get a striker from the Welsh League at one point?
Oh yes, yes.
Go on, you take Rhys Griffiths.
Rhys Griffiths, Port Albert's finest ever striker. No,
Actually, that's not even a joke.
Yeah, no, genuinely. Yeah, I just remember him just scoring penalties. Just that's it. He just scored penalties and didn't do very much else.
Yeah.
Particularly that I just remember it because I remember I went to see that night. I think that night of the day that we played the game or the day before, I went to England versus San Marino in the World Cup qualifiers at Wembley, and that England game was very funny because Joe Hart was like obviously crouched on the halfway line because San Marino weren't getting anywhere near the goal, and the whole crowd was singing Joe Hart give us a wave for the whole time because it's so boring and whatever. So and then I came out and I saw some guy in like an Argyle tracksuit at the England game, and for me as like a young kid, that was like the best thing I'd ever seen because it was like, oh my god, there's someone wearing an Argyle tracksuit and we're so bad. But and then we played Barnet in that game the next day, I think. And yeah, we beat them 4-1. I think Conor Howerhand scored a free kick and Rhys Griffiths scored a penalty in that game.
Don't think Griffiths. No, I think he did. I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
He scored the first goal. Yeah. But yeah, I just don't know. That just popped into my head. I just remember him scoring penalty.
Yeah, Rhys Griffiths was a funny one because he when he was injured all the time, he had that 20 minutes that he came on against Northampton, and he was as for the comments,
he was a striker mentioned. Sorry,
yeah, he was a 32-year-old fireman who, by all accounts, was absolutely fantastic in the League of Wales, which is even worse than the League of Northern Ireland.
That's at Home Park, did he?
Sorry,
that's not derogatory. It just did.
Why did Metropolitan University get into the Europa League qualifying rounds thanks to the Welsh League? So,
well, yeah, and he did have some technical proficiency. That Northampton game, he came on and turned the game around. He got 1 assist and 1 goal. But I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. I don't care how good you are technically. You cannot step up from semi-pro to pro at the age of 32. Not happening, whoever you are. And it was a really wild decision, and I absolutely think if he'd have gone up to a League Two side aged 23, even if he'd have gone up to a League Two side aged 27, there would have been a chance of making it work. But at age 32, absolutely no danger. I'm going to have to wrap up shortly because I've got tea nearly ready downstairs. But there are a couple of players. Now, I think Aaron wanted to mention the Algerian goat, and I'm sure me and Finn will want to mention St Pat's Athletics' finest.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll get on. We'll get on. Let's do one more player that from the comments, and then we'll get on to our individual goats, our greatest of all times. We've already mentioned Adam, Wayne Rooney, but what about the Ginger Rooney, Lewis Rooney? That was his first start against Hartlepool. That 5-0 win, wasn't it?
Sam saying yes, so I agree.
Goals, and one of them was an absolute worldie.
Really was, and I spent the evening on a night out. I can't remember where I ended up, so it probably speaks to the volumes of the night out. But apparently, I spent much of the night singing "Lewis Rooney's better than Wayne." So he must have left an impression. Yeah, well, for now. He's a weird one. Wasn't he? It's like one of those that came in. It reminded me a lot. I think I've mentioned it before of like the game before the playoffs, kind of starting to dictate a few lineups. And the fact that going into these playoff games, we just wiped the floor with Hartlepool. With Lewis Rooney scored a brilliant goal. And I have to mention with this game, Curtis Nelson bundling the ball in with his arm that somehow wasn't spotted was something that entertained me in that as well. And then obviously
Vincent Durrell play that game, and he's
so.
He was quite good. So. Like even though we won 5-0, Hartlepool still had quite a few shots, and he was quite good.
He did what he needed to, yeah. And then he didn't play in the playoff game either, which obviously proved right, and the fact that it worked. But obviously, if you look back the season before, which is a game Sam mentioned earlier, when we went to Shrewsbury, we were looking to win the league and won 2-0, and that was the game just before we went into the playoffs, and we had Zach Anser and Ryan Brunt there, and they didn't start in the playoffs. And actually, when they did come off the bench in the playoffs, they were fantastic. In another time, Lewis Rooney might have made more of an impact in those playoffs, maybe even at Wembley, and got us over the line. But hey, it wasn't to be. But we'll always have Hartlepool.
Zach Anser's dad will know Wayne Rooney very well because he was the co-host of Wayne Rooney's Street Soccer. There you go. There's a fun fact for you. There you go. So if we need Zach back, we know the man to call. Really quickly then, Sam, before you rush off for your tea at 10 p.m, you really need to eat earlier. Coming from a specialised nutritionalist like myself, that's how I get in shape. There's a question here. It's been mentioned 4 times. Where has it gone? Where is it? Simon King. Anyone other than Sam remember? I don't. So I can't imagine the other two do.
I hate to go all Carlo Ancelotti and Luke Garbutt, but who?
Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, defender on loan from Gillingham came in about the time of the players' strike in late August, early September 2011. We got him and Jamie Griffiths in on the same day, and I think they stayed for a couple of months each.
I'd just like to mention, because it came into my head earlier, and because he's got the same second name as me, River Allen was a player that came on for a couple of games, I think.
Came on for a couple of games around the start of the 14-15 season, and I felt didn't look out of place at the time, but obviously his career hasn't really taken off since.
Taunton Town legend or something, right?
Yeah.
Tiverton.
Don't know if it's possibly. Yeah, Tiverton, I think. Yeah.
They're the same place in my head, so it's not really a problem.
He had a year at Gateshead. Yeah, he did have a year at Gateshead. Yeah. And then he just sort of then eventually fell down into the English Southwest non-league circuit. Obviously, along with all the other players who we played and never quite made it. Who remembers Tyler Harvey's year at Wrexham before he dropped down into the circuit as well? That was another one.
I don't remember that, but I do remember him playing for Newcastle under 23s after he just left us and scoring a goal.
Yeah, that happened as well. Question that says, have we mentioned Dominic Blizzard? Yes, we have. We mentioned the goal at Luton. Don't you worry about that.
Ben Yeoman also mentions Jake Cole. We've already spoken about Alex McDonald, Rene Gilmartin. I think we could do an episode just on goalkeepers alone. That would be brilliant. Guy Branston, what a man. And obviously, we've just spoken about River Allen and a bit on Tyler Harvey. But Jake Cole, just one thing I want to mention: Ibrahim Sissoko getting a recycled Jake Cole chant is it's just horrific. Please give Sissoko his own chant because
it was also briefly trialled.
You're expecting quite a lot. We're like 2 years.
Don't care if Sam Cosgrove gets it. Don't care. It's Jake Cole's chant.
2.5 years into Morgan Whittaker, and we still haven't figured out what chant we're going to use for him yet. So,
No, very true. Really quickly, Zach Brown says Connor Smith. The only memory I have of Connor Smith was watching Barnet play Wingate and Finchley in a pre-season friendly in which he played for about 20 minutes and looked.
David Ajaha. That's one. That's a good one.
Yeah. He was mentioning in the comments earlier on. Go on then, Sam. Get on to your goat. Actually, we'll leave your goat till the end. We'll leave your goat to the end, the big one. Obviously, I want to mention Sir Hamza Ben Sharif. That goal up at Cheltenham away. He scored on every Argyle debut he's ever had. What a man. Brilliant header. The JPT. I think that was a game we went up on the coach. I met some Argyle fans who I still talk to now, quite close, good mates. That was the first time I actually met them. They knew of me through a friend of a friend, and we basically got talking. And then one of them turned down free tickets, stupidly, outside the ground. Somebody was just trying to give them away. And we ended up having to pay, but we paid to see Ben Sharif's incredible debut. And that man cemented himself in my personal folklore of Argyle legends. If we were picking a team based on vibes and a little bit of banter thrown in, he would get the centre mid starting spot for me.
The most outrageous handball to not be given as well in a defence. I mean, we talk about Zach Rudden in attacking handball, but that non-penalty at Exeter away when he had a flying save to punch away the ball, how that wasn't given is absolutely
can't not love
remarkable.
Him, right? You can't not love him.
I wouldn't go that far, but he was certainly a cult hero.
John Simon says, I met David Agier at Stevenage train station. I love that. I had a wee next to Barry Hales once, and that was life-changing. Adam, who is your GOAT? Who is your go-to greatest of all time?
Oh, crikey. It's I feel like we need to bring in Topio Badei. Because I remember him being spoken about earlier. He's one of those that he was so good we signed him twice, and it was a game that I think you'll remember even better than I do, Aaron. But York City away, we've gone 1-0 down again on our travels. It was, as I recall, a pretty grim November afternoon. Nothing seemed to be quite going right for us at the time, and then up steps Topio Badei, puts it in. Wild celebrations for a 1-1 draw up at Kit Kat Crescent or whatever it was called at the time. It's one of those on perhaps a slightly more serious point. It just shows just how far we have come that we're no longer celebrating 1-1 draws away at York City. But as a moment in time, it's pretty special, and I'm sure you'll be able to say a bit more.
Also claimed to be the fastest player that John Sheridan ever saw. In an interview to the Plymouth Herald, so
yeah, he was those away days just as you say, Adam, just symbolize how far we've come as a club. And just like I remember we went to the I believe we went to the National Railway Museum before. I know how to live. Absolutely incredible museum, by the way. If you love museums, go to York. There's some incredible ones there. You got to get yourself to Jorvik as well. Incredible place if you like to go back in time, shall we say? But yeah, Toby Obadajay scoring that goal, and I bust my cousin's lip in the celebrations. I'm not going to say how, bit aggressive, but yeah, incredible memories, and that's one that I remember so well because every point was a prisoner back then. Finley Allen, your GOAT. I've already taken Ben Sharif from you. Please tell me it's a Frenchman.
Yeah, well, I'd say I've got a joint one with Sam, but yeah,
No,
Sakuna.
leave that one to Sam.
Yeah, all right. So Sakuna, I don't know, something about the guy, just like so. Honestly, right? That like, he was just so bad. He was good. Like that was that. My favorite Sakuna moment that doesn't relate on the pitch is didn't he sort of bundle Robbie Williams' free kick over the line, but it was already over the line against Macclesfield in Cole Fletcher's first game. And also, you can edit Wikipedia, and there was once a place on his thing on his Wikipedia page which said Zinedine Zidane has said that Ladji Sakuna is the second coming of him or something like that. That's just amazing. I just love him.
Yeah, his only goal for Argyle came at home in a 2-2 draw with Accrington Stanley. Just saying that out loud, as Adam's already said, just so how far we've come. Absolutely love him. There was somebody. My only memory of Sakuna really is somebody sticking up a YouTube clip of them singing Sakuna, and that's like every time I go to an Argyle game, that song is in my head. So whoever did that, thank you, because it's absolutely fantastic, brilliant memory. A chant that we never got going. But one thing we don't do well as a fan base actually is sing old songs of former players and legends. So maybe we should bring that back. Get You're My Cowan Hall and the Sakuna chant that we never actually sung on the terraces going again for our fallen legends. Sam Down, your greatest of all time. You've touched on him very vaguely, but I feel like we need the big one to finish.
Yeah, a player who has been an incredible meme player in our group chats, and then is my go-to funny obscure Argyle player. Is of course the one, the only Argyle memes. I hope you're watching along. I hope you're ready for this. Is of course Alfie Lewis. Just the most obscure signing tenure with Argyle. Obviously, Schumacher had just taken over from Ryan Lowe. The club was on a really exciting upturn. We just won a couple of games over Christmas. We were just going into the Birmingham game in the Cup. And we announced we'd brought in this young lad from the League of Ireland who was so beloved by the St. Pat's Athletic fans. He left a really nice little goodbye video for them. Their fans were all in the comments saying about what a great player he was. They called him the Cockney Perlo because he was a Essex boy, West Ham Academy product, went to play in the League of Ireland, I think with a view to then getting a move back to England, and got his move back to England with Argyle. And we were all thinking, well, we saw the highlights compilations going around. We thought he looks a proper player, this lad. And I think it was vaguely mentioned in the press that he was a highlight. He was a product of our data-driven approach to signings, that he'd had really good data in the League of Ireland. And yeah, he just came in and never played. And I think he had
famously those 15 minutes against Fleetwood where we managed to...
Yeah, he had 5 minutes off the bench against Birmingham in the FA Cup when we were already winning and we stayed winning. But he also unfortunately had about 10 minutes at Fleetwood away in the league when he came on at 3-1 up and we drew 3-3, which perhaps didn't reflect brilliant. I don't think it was really his fault. I think we as a team just collapsed that day, and the third goal was offside anyway. So I think it's harsh to blame him for that collapse. But yeah, he just never played again after that. And I've always wondered what happened, because there was all this fanfare and all this excitement around the signing. And I think a few of us sort of developed a ironic appreciation, for him based on the fact he never played and he was going to come in and be this fantastic player. And then it was sort of quietly, Go on.
I was going to say, it's also the fact that he was, as much as I don't want to say it, probably arguably our best ever manager's first signing, and he was so good, but Alfie Lewis.
Yeah, there is that to it as well. Schumacher, irrespective of how he left, I think is our best ever manager. And for all these, great Argyle managers, you associate a great first signing. Like Paul Sturrock was, Roman Lario was certainly one of his first signings, if not his absolute first. Ian Holloway's first signing was Barry Hales. Derek Adams' first signing was Gary Sawyer. Ryan Lowe's first signing was Joe Edwards. And then you have Stephen Schubacker's first signing was this lad from Essex who played in the League of Ireland, who played for us twice, including throwing away a 3-1 lead. And then at the start of the next season, it was sort of very quietly announced that he was going back to the League of Ireland. I've always just wondered what happened. I mean, is it just a case that he wasn't going to play because we had so many good players in that position? I mean, he went back to Dundalk and seemingly did quite well there. And then there were rumours in the Irish press that he was going to get a move back to England, maybe, but that never materialised. And now he's not really played for about a year. So in the incredibly unlikely event, Alfie, if you're watching, but I'd love to do an interview. I'd love to find out what happened at Argyle for such a hyped signing to completely sort of disappear off the face of the earth. But there we go. That's my ironic goat. I think if we're going for our sincere goats, it would be probably how Mosi Carey's site would be featuring in the discussion. But yeah, Alfie Lewis, what on earth happened? I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm not sure it would be a My Argyle life. It'd be more a My Argyle couple of months. But we'd be very keen.
I mean, maybe it was one of those where the data looked brilliant, and then we actually finally got him in person, and we realised he wasn't too great. Which, dare I say, it might have been a foretelling of signings to come in the years after. But that's my vote out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad you said it. So I think we'll wrap this up because Sam has to eat at nearly 10 p.m. So, and to be fair, may have run its course, but there's plenty of players we haven't yet touched on from, Paul Connolly to Luke Summerfield to David Norris to Mickey Evans, Connor Grant, Al Joffrey, Doumbé, Worrell, Steve Adams, Nick Chadwick. I'm not sure how we got through a whole pod of this without mentioning Chadders. Rory Fallon touched on briefly. Timar Frio, Capaldi, Coughlin, the lot. And we spent, and not even a mention of Jan Songo either. So if you want us to do this again, I'm sure we can, and I absolutely will. There are stupid amount of international breaks, and Adam loves them, so I won't slate them in front of him. But we need to fill that time with something. So there's plenty more players to talk about. I'm not sure we got through all 1,193 of them just yet. As always, thank you to the just under 1,000 that are watching live right now, and appreciate it as always. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And like I said, we'll be back.
Sorry if I accidentally libelled anybody.
And me as well. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, and on behalf of Argyle Life, I'm very sorry if that happened. Please do not sue us. We don't have any money. But anybody that does want to sue him, Sam Downs, your man, bottom left. Anyway, I'll give you his address as long as I don't have to pay up. I'm that sort of man. Anyway, love you, leave you. Thanks to Adam, Finn, and Sam for joining us tonight. I think that's it.
Cheers.
Love you, bye.
Cheers all.
Cheers all.